Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. Hundreds of illegal drug houses are being run mafia style by Chinese nationals in Maine. It's driving up the cost of housing and energy, causing residential streets to smell of marijuana, creating fires from mismanagement, and making billions for the CCP to tap into, and is fueled by illegal immigration and lax drug enforcement. China would never allow Americans to set up shop in their country, to skirt laws there, to make money off the Chinese people by destroying parts of their country and then sending that money back to D.C. to be used against Beijing. And yet, authorities here are largely just letting it happen. They are keeping an eye out on it, but there's not much else they can or are willing to do. But perhaps the worst part is how our own government and financial institutions are facilitating it. There is a word for this in Chinese, as Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy has talked about. Love him or hate him, he makes a great point here. Take a listen.
Xi Jinping will be running circles around Joe Biden. I think it's a capability issue at the top right now in the United States of America. I mean, the climate change agenda is part of what China uses to laugh at and trample and stomp all over the face of the United States of America. I mean, there's a word in Mandarin. It's called baizuo. You know what it means? Refers to progressive white people in the United States. Doesn't apply to me. Some of you guys. But it's like a derisive term.
How do you say it?
It's Baizuo if you're looking it up.
Okay.
And so I'm not fluent in Mandarin, but it'd be something like baizuo, something like that.
Now, when it comes to the illegal drug houses in Maine, we talked about the other week with the editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire, which has done great investigative work in actually going to these properties and getting the lowdown on what exactly is happening. But now he's back tonight with some important updates because, as I mentioned a moment ago, our own government and financial institutions are facilitating the CCP-sanctioned stealing of her wealth, which gives us only more drugs in return, as we deal with a massive OD epidemic and homelessness crisis born of drug abuse already. Our next guest writes that about 70 of the 100 or so properties they have personally vetted had mortgages originating through Quontic Bank, based out of Astoria, New York. Joining us now to discuss, as promised, is Steve Robinson, the editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire. Steve, thanks for being back tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Kara.
Great. So you have updates. What is Quontic Bank, and who is the real estate investor who bought it back in 2009 as it was failing and then rebranded it into what it is today?
So the person who actually bought and created Quontic Bank died in a motorcycle accident last year in August. So it has new leadership at the moment. They brought in a new CEO. But Quontic they brand themselves as an adaptive digital bank. They have a special designation from the federal government. They're a community development financial institution. And what that allows is there's a government fund that encourages them to make loans to historically underserved communities, in this case, immigrants. If you look at the Quontic's website, they brag about being able to secure home loans for people who are not present in the United States legally or who are foreign nationals. And according to my research, Quontic originated the loans for 70 of the properties in Maine that would go on to become illegal marijuana grow operations. There's no indication that they knew at the time that they were working with what the Department of Homeland Security refers to as a Asian transnational organized crime. So there's no indication so far that Quontic has done anything wrong, but it does appear that this CDFI designation has been used not to help low-income migrants or marginalized communities, but is instead basically using taxpayer money to facilitate and encourage what's a pretty vast criminal conspiracy here in Maine.
We saw a very similar thing play out with COVID, right? It was to help those who were kicked out of their jobs, weren't allowed to work, and yet you see there's these, a lot of people in business and also a lot of criminals. They would just take the money, lots of the money, buy new Lamborghinis, basically just squander it. So a kind of a similar dynamic, I think, playing out here.